Good morning, and welcome to this webcast about installing Lync 2013 RTM Frontend and Edge. My name is Courtney, and I'll be the English dubber for the first part of this webcast, made by Fabrizio Volpe, Microsoft MVP on Directory Services. In the agenda, we have the installation of the software mandatory for Lync setup on Windows 2012, the installation process of a Lync 2013 Standard Edition Frontend, and the installation of a Lync Edge. The installation steps are, for the most part, the same you have in the TechNet documentation. The webcast about the configuration of a TMG reverse proxy for the web services of Lync is already online in the video. Installing and configuring Forefront Threat Management Gateway TMG. For the installation process of Office Web Apps Server, you can use the video. Lync 2013 and PowerPoint presentations. Deploy of Office Web Apps Server. If you've already installed Lync 2010 or Lync 2013, the whole process for Lync 2013 RTM is different only in few steps. My lab environment actually contains one Windows 2012 domain controller, one Exchange 2013 server, one Office Web Apps server, and the TMG server I've talked about in the previous part of this presentation. Please remember that in a production environment, it is always a good idea to have a reverse proxy server to publish Lync on the external network with a reasonable level of security. Lync Edge is practically mandatory if your idea is to give access to external users. Front-end requirements. The list of the requirements for a front-end server is the following: Windows PowerShell 3.0, Microsoft .NET Framework 4.5, Windows Identity Foundation 3.5, Internet Information Services, IIS. Front-end servers and Standard Edition servers must run Internet Information Services, IIS, with the modules in the list. Windows Desktop Experience. The following script taken by the TechNet documentation installs almost all the features required for Lync 2013 RTM. You need to add Windows Identity Foundation 3.5 from the Roles and Features menu. The steps are the following. A. I've checked the version of PowerShell already running on my server with the command. B. I've launched the PowerShell script to add the required roles and features. C. I've enabled the feature Windows Identity Foundation 3.5. The following steps are required only if this is the first deployment of Lync in your company. Active Directory preparation. Preparing the Active Directory schema. Extends the Active Directory schema by adding new classes and attributes that are used by Lync server run once for each forest in your deployment where Lync server will be deployed. You must be a member of the Schema Admins group in the root domain and a member of the Enterprise Admins group on the Schema Master. Preparing the forest. Creates global settings and universal groups that are used by Lync server run once for each forest in your deployment where Lync server will be deployed. You must be a member of the Enterprise Admins group. Preparing domains. Adds permissions on objects to be used by members of universal groups. Run once per user domain or server domain. You must be a member of the domain admins group. Create and verify DNS SRV records. In my domain DNS, I've created several records related to the web part of Lync, me, dial-in, and resource pool FQDN, and to the edge part, SIP, AV, WC. I've also created 2 DSN zones to have a split brain useful for the internal and external Lync records. Install Standard Edition Server Database. Setting up a Standard Edition server as the only server in your infrastructure that homes users differ from other server installations, and that there is a selection in the deployment wizard specifically for setting up the initial server. Log on to the server where you are going to install Standard Edition Server as a local administrator or a domain equivalent. In the Lync Server Deployment Wizard, click Prepare First Standard Edition Server. On the Prepare Single Standard Edition Server page, click Next. On the Executing Commands page, the SQL Server 2012 Express is installed as the central management store. Necessary firewall rules are created. When the installation of the database and prerequisite software is completed, click Finish. RTC stores persistent user data such as user contact lists, scheduled conferences, and access control lists, and is replicated to all Lync servers. Install Lync Server Administrative Tools. This topic describes how to install the administrative tools you need to use to deploy and manage Lync Server 2012. Log on as a local administrator, minimum requirement, to the computer where you want to install the administrative tools. On the Microsoft Lync Server 2013 Deployment Wizard page, click Install Administrator Tools. When the installation successfully completes, click Exit. Defining and configuring the topology. You define and configure your topology by using Topology Builder. Start Topology Builder. Select New Topology. You are prompted for a location and file name for saving the topology. Navigate to the location where you want to save the new topology XML file, enter a name for the file, and then click Save. On the Definition Primary Domain page, enter the name of the primary SIP domain for your organization, and then click Next. On the Specify Additional Supported Domains page, enter the names of additional domains, if any, and then click Next. On the Define the First Site page, enter a name and a description for the first site, and then click Next. On the Specify Site Details page, enter the location information for the site, and then click Next. On the New Topology was Successfully Defined page, ensure the Open New Front-End Wizard. When this wizard closes, checkbox is selected, and then click Finish. Define and configure a front-end pool or standard edition server. Define front-end pool. In a standard edition, this FQDN will be exactly the same FQDN of your server. Select the radio button for standard edition server and click Next. I'll select only the conferencing feature. In a second phase, we're able to add features and roles as needed. I'll not call a Kate mediation server. My deployment will be exposed to the internet, so I'll engage in Edge Pool. The SQL store defaults are acceptable, so I'll click Next. Define the file store. It's really important to save the information on a remote server, so we have to define the share on a remote server, and to give the right permissions before we select Define a new file store, pointing to the aforementioned share and selecting Next. Specify the web service's URL. The base external URL is important in my situation because it'll be the base name for the web services exposed on the internet, like Meet and Dial-In. Select an Office Web Apps server. As we said before, create it or, for the moment, point it to any URL you like. No. Without Office Web Apps Server, PowerPoint features in Lync 2013 are not available. Configure Edge topology. Select New Edge Pool from the Site and Edge Pool section. On the Define Edge Pool FQDN section, enter the host name of the new Edge server and select Single Computer Pool. No, we're talking about the name that the internal network must be able to resolve, and the Lync Edge is a standalone server. To make the situation less complicated, I've added my Edge name, Lync09, in the DNS zone of my domain, lync.intra. So any server in the domain will be able to call Lync09 without problem. Enter the desired external FQDNs. SIP is the suggested name for the SIP access parameter, but it's not mandatory. Define the internal IP address. Requires to enter the IP address of the internal interface. Define the external IP address. Here you have the public IPs of the internal interface or interfaces. Remember, we have selected to use no NAT. Next, hot pool should be already populated with the FQDN of our standard edition frontend. Now it's time to publish the topology, right-clicking on the top node in the left-hand pane. Install the local configuration store. To successfully complete this procedure, you should be logged on to the server minimally as a local administrator and a domain user who has membership in at least the RTC Universal Read-Only Admin group. On the Deployment Wizard page, click Install or Update Lync Server System. On the Lync Server 2013 page, next to Step 1, Install Local Configuration Store, click Run. On the Local Server Configuration page, ensure that the Retrieve Configuration automatically from the Central Management Store option is selected, and then click Next. When the local server configuration installation is complete, click Finish. Install Lync Server's server components. In the Deployment Wizard, verify that Step 1, Install Local Configuration Store has a green check mark, which means that the step has been completed. To install the Lync Server 2013 components for the server, click Run next to Step 2, Set up or remove Lync Server components. On the Set up Lync Server components page, click Next to set up components as defined in the published topology. The Executing Commands page displays a summary of commands and installation information as it proceeds. When finished, you can use the list to select a log to view, and then click View Log. When Lync Server 2013 component setup completes, click Finish. Configure certificates for front-end server. To successfully complete this procedure, you should be logged on as a user who is a member of the RTC Universal Servers Admins group. Each standard edition server requires up to 4 certificates: the OAuth token issue certificate, a default certificate, a web internal certificate, and a web external certificate. I've created, with an internal CA, and assigned a single default certificate with appropriate subject alternative name entries. Step 3. Request, install, or assign certificates. On the Certificate Wizard page, click Request. On the Certificate Request page, click Next. Send the request immediately to an online certification authority. On the Certificate Authority account page, you are prompted for credentials to request and process the certificate request at the CA. On the Specify Alternate Certificate Template page, to use the default web server template, click Next. On the Name and Security Settings page, specify a friendly name that should allow you to identify the certificate and purpose. Set the bit length of key. I accepted the default of 2048 bits. Select the mark the certificate's private key as exportable if you determine that the certificate and private key needs to be moved or copied to other systems, and then click Next. On the Organization Information page, optionally provide organization information, and then click Next. On the Geographical Information page, optionally provide geographical information, and then click Next. On the Subject Name, Subject Alternate Names page, review the subject alternative names that will be added, and then click Next. On the SIP Domains page, select the SIP domain, and then click Next. On the Configure Additional Subject Alternate Names page, add any additional required subject alternative names. I added the FQDN of the front-end server, Lync 03, SIP, Meet, Dial-In, Lync Discover Internal, AV, and WC for both my SIP domains. AV and WC are records used for my Edge deployment. On the Certificate Request Summary page, click Next, and on the Executing Commands page, click Next. If you cleared the checkbox for Assign the Certificate's Lync Server certificate usages on the previous page, you will be presented with a certificate assignment page. Click Next and follow the steps to apply a certificate. On the Certificate Wizard page, verify that the status of the certificate is assigned, and then click Close. Start services and service status on servers. In the Lync Server Deployment Wizard, on the Lync Server 2013 page, click Run next to Step 4, Start Services. On the Start Services page, click Next to start the Lync Server services on the server. Use the Step Service Status, optional, immediately following Start Services to check if the services are running. Usually, if the services are not starting in a timely manner, there could be an error related to the certificates.
Good morning. My name is Brenda, and I'll be the English dubber for the second part of this webcast. Edge installation steps. Edge has to be installed on a standalone server. If you're using Windows 2012 software, requirements are the following. Configure the application server role and add Windows Identity Foundation 3.5 from the Roles and Features menu. Export and import your topology for Edge installation. On the front end, from a Lync PowerShell, launch the following command: export -cs, that's C, lowercase s, configuration, file name, configuration file path, .zip. Copy the file .zip on the Edge and run the Lync setup and the Lync deployment. You need to log onto the computer on which you want to install your Edge server as a member of the local administrations group or an account with equivalent user rights and permissions. In the deployment wizard, click Install or Update Lync Server System. After the wizard determines the deployment state for step 1, install local configuration, store, click Run, and then do the following. In the Configure Local Replica of Central Management Store dialog box, click Import from a file, recommended for Edge servers. Go to the location of the exported topology configuration file. Select the .zip file, click Open, and then click Next. The deployment wizard reads the configuration information from the configuration file and writes the XML configuration file to the local computer. After the executing commands process is finished, click Finish. In the deployment wizard, click Step 2, Set up or remove Lync server components specified in the XML configuration file that is stored on the local computer. Assign the required certificates. I've used the third-party CA for the external certificate and the internal CA for the internal certificate. Create it with an offline request, copy it to the enterprise CA. Then the resulting certificate was copied to the Lync Edge. Wildcard entries are supported only for the simple URLs on the reverse proxy. On the Edge server, you need a multi-send certificate. At the end, start and check the Lync services. And verify that the replication is working, opening the Lync Management Console on the front-end server. Launch a Lync client session and test all the features. That's the end of this webcast. Thank you for your kind attention.